Let me. Yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Danny and Troy Show. And
I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Discussing how important and what we're really looking to do is open the door to creative expression. And not really having
many types, right, Troy?
That's right.
You never know when you open one door what the hell's going to come out of it or go in it.
That's exactly right. And it's to allow that to be in a space where you're not restricted or not actually restricting yourself and saying, okay, and these are the situations that unfortunately, I think, is the majority of people. They're so restricted. I mean, their mind is so bombarded with what they need to do, what they have been told they need to do, and how they need to live, and what is important. And these things I'm leading to is like getting a job, making sure you buy a house and get a mortgage, and you got a nice car, and you fill your house with all the latest tech equipment. Not that I'm not.
It's worse than raccoon ugly, man. You got to chew your whole body off to get away from this one.
Yeah, but I'm not saying I'm not in that boat too, but at least with this channel and these recordings, we're exploring this possibility of being able to step away from these sorts of mainstream ways of being, in the mainstream media controlling that in a big part, and what's happening in the world with wars and pandemics and everything else.
What a drag.
Let's find something to have fun with, and that's why we're here.
When I hear me or I hear you say have fun, and other people too, when I'm talking about it, I feel dirty. Right. It's like, well, how can you have fun when people are suffering? It's like, is that my problem? I'll be happy to help, make a couple of comments or whatever, but I don't think that I should feel bad because I feel good.
No. And that's the bad part, I think, about society is, that comes from others as well. Not to name anybody, but I've had some past relationships where I've been, out of the circle because I'm not dreary. I'm not kind of, depressed. I'm not, looking at how or engaging in conversation about how bad things are, but I'm talking about the optimist side, how things could be changed, how we could be different, and how it is really can be a personal individual mindset that put forward. But and those that do that, you have to get to a certain level, I believe, before people kind of I don't know, it's kind of like a preacher. Like people see, if someone's out on this soapbox and they're preaching, this is the right way, this is, and that aspect or that theme has been around for a long time, and there's a lot of typically where I live anyway, people don't like people preaching. And if I start telling people, or even in my immediate community, of a better way, it can be considered like, oh, what do you know? But I don't know. It's finding the balance between that, I think, is important.
First time I moved, I'm sorry, yeah. No, first time I moved to LA, I saw, I'm sorry, Emma, I would like for you to crank up your volume a little bit, because you're still soft and I can't tell if you're trailing off or if you're just getting quiet. That's better. Thank you.
Okay.
But, I got to LA, I was having a little trouble, and I want to actually one of my friends, new friends, who used to be a call girl in New York City. And no, I didn't. We actually became very good friends. And Allison. Now that I had to mention that, didn't I? Now I have for no idea what I was talking about, because now I'm just focusing on Allison. What was I talking about, Troy?
Okay. Well, yeah.
Well, we'll come back to it later. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the crew left. They're on shore leave now, so we'll just let them go. Thank you, Allison, for the short visit. So,
but you've got something.
What's that?
You've got something you were saying. We're going back into creative expression, autofiction. You have a reading again today.
I do. Yes, I do. That's where I was just about to go.
Awesome.
Off of my reading pad.
Yeah.
All right. This one, sorry for the jump, people, but we'll see.
Great.
So I've given Drukpa's father, Billy Boy, also known as Billy Ben, a name, Billy. And I gave him an image, or stole one from World War I.
Okay.
And started writing about it. And it became quite complex. And maybe you can stick with me on this one as to how we navigate this particular kind of difficulty of getting to a dead end, or it's more like you're driving down the highway, and then it'd be like driving to the dam, right? Or where the boat launch is, but you don't know that. So you're driving along and you go over the hill and there's the lake below you, and then the road ends in the lake. And you think, okay, what do we do now? Well, you don't want to keep concentrating on the lake or the way forward, because your car is not a boat. So I'm thinking, well, let's turn to lunch. So you make diversions along the way, right? Which is quite natural, I think, for people. Well, or the car stopped by the side of the road, or you pull over to a picnic area or whatever. There's very little difference between all of that. So Drukpa has ended up swimming in the soup that he has cooked for himself. And I'm afraid that he may be the main ingredients of this rock soup, but we'll see. So here's his attempt at making a transition between being confused, that we talked about this briefly before, and finding a way. No, I mean, he's not going to choose anything predictable. Why read the book if you know what's going to happen in the end? And even if you read the last page when it exists, I don't think you will not want to read it again.
Okay.
So this is a grease factory, I guess. Okay, here we go. Drukpa's father was a quiet man, a loner, a hunter, a killer. He was also a lover and a very faithful man. Bringing his beautiful trophy bride to America was not without chances. Good for him, he never considered how he was going to keep her in silk, the one after the parachute, and jewels, but as a woman, she would help him find a way to have it all. The bride was as innocent and as lovely as ever a girl born in Germany. Her father, a dental surgeon of renown, who had flown as reconnaissance for the Red Baron Manfred von Richthofen as part of his flying circus, a knight and a castle owner, suffered through the Soviet occupation so that a bad taste came from every word uttered, even though the bride had been in love with a disappearing Russian tank commander. The poet, Billy, as he was called, referred to has had his own notions of monotheism. but to express them was blasphemy. And that wouldn't get him invited to any church socials, picnics, hunt clubs, or stock car races. His ideas summed up a few desperate notions. One was an Egyptian concept, or rather Sumerian in origin, he deduced, based on mythology, which was not a lie, but simply another way of seeing. Billy Boy, as he was called, or even Billy Ben, was echoed in the lyrics of a song that instructed Billy Ben that when company came around, it was Bill, take a tater and wait. Bill learned to be, to learn to fight very well. Typo. First fight, fist fight, knife fight, or wrestling. First thing the brothers did when they came together was fight. Billy took Harold into the street and held him upside down and shook all the change out of his pockets. What else did a young man need to be proud of his old man? Billy handled snakes like they were spaghetti and was quick to level his 12 gauge, squeeze the trigger, and bag the rabbit before the rabbit ever saw him coming. So Billy was not afraid of anybody or anything, not even the notions of hell. It was clear all too soon that hell was other people. Billy dug a note out of the post and stated to them as a way, Billy dug a note out of the past and stated them as a way to proceed. Here are a few. Atum was the father of the gods, creating the first divine couple, Shu and Tefnut, from whom he stands for the sovereignty of masculinity, logic, and raw power. He is the creator God, the God of sun and fertility. Originally an elder god known as Atum, who was created to slay the demons, the corrupted elder gods of earth, becoming Demogorge, the god eater, from those whom all other gods are descended. He was also considered to be the father of the pharaohs. Many pharaohs used the title son of Atum long after the power base moved from Lunu. Today, it's some bitch, capital B. God eater, I am no longer sitting on my grandmother's house, afraid to walk around for fear that Rawhead and Bloody Bones will attack and eat me. The art of storytelling completes what nature cannot finish. Encounters in the dark require chance, which is to say, movement without order. And that is also called unlikely. Any gods around the Irish had better be ready to take ribbing and not just wanted that. He'd better be able to dance a jig too. Mother will not have you digging in the dirt either without you having your ears scrubbed down to the cartilage and dutifully returning to the garden before gathering some potatoes on your way back to the house. Mother and father had something in common. They both needed someone to believe in them. Mother was always doing phenomenal things. Papa too, but they couldn't do it all. They needed third-party endorsement, someone to watch their backs, and just a little push from time to time.
Okay.
Now, that was a little rough, 2 comments, principally because of the alienation of these names, Atum, who even before Ra, right? Satum became Ra, the sun. And we start from a very basic level. We haven't related to the sun here yet, of where he grew up, but we certainly will have to. In how to track this really surprise Deus Machina of having a country boy talk about stuff that most modern people, except a few anthropologists, probably even know about.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
That's the beauty.
I mean, we haven't even gotten to the Ibis yet.
Sure.
Or, Thoth or any of those other characters that we're so familiar with. Because I believe in principle, and I think Billy's going to find this out, that we're speaking of principles. And the application of each principle in a certain place, certain part of the country where people share things in common, distinguishes who their God, quote unquote, God is. And God, of course, is everything they are not. That's the definition.
Sure.
So it's a mystery until you discover it. And then little by little, you're chipping little stones off of your statue of God, right?
Yeah.
Or melting it down or doing whatever you're doing until you realize you don't have that anymore. Not because you don't have it, but because there's no impetus for generation. And if you're not, as Nietzsche said, infatuated with Christianity because it's been 2,000 years and they haven't invented a single new God yet. As opposed to Chinese, I think is Taoists, who if their God stops working for them, they take him out to the edge of town.
Sure.
And set up a new God.
Yeah.
Because it's a projection, right? Whatever it is you're projecting on, money is God, for instance, right? Or some of the other stuff that we acclaim as being a substitute or representative of God. We start getting further and further away from what you and I have been speaking about rather frequently lately, is to abandon the care that we think we're going to get from a system that's been created around us quite obviously to others' benefits rather than our own. Now, at one point in time, prior to this, when I was writing a little bit about Billy and saying that he's a Scot, Scotch-Irish, Welsh, British Isles kind of Celt, who,
right.
lime their hair, dress naked and carry a sword and, distance between this life and the next one is the breadth of a hair. What do I care for? Well, it's not, of course, if, you've got a mortgage payment, you got to survive this battle, you got kids, what about the car? Yeah, I left that car with the tire jacked up. I got to get home, whatever all that nonsense is all about. Billy's running around in his autofiction, his own autofiction, in the heaths of Ireland and Scotland.
Okay.
And that's what he wants. He doesn't want to be rich. He wants to be free. He wants to, if he's wearing a kilt, which he has, and for dress-up occasions, right? He doesn't go to church. And for him, if he's got to eat lichen off of a rock, that's nothing unusual.
Sure.
Right? It's something to eat. Thank you, Jesus, or whatever. Thank you, the nature gods, which they get to look more and more deeply into because of their very close association with nature.
Sure.
Now we look at nature through a car window.
Yeah.
Or a TV screen or whatever, and we've been slowly weaned off of nature. And we just see it purely objectively as something to cut down, cut up, plane, transport, band, and sell.
Yeah.
Oh boy. And that's the kind of, I don't know, journey into the other world that we're on.
Sure.
But for us, it's reality.
Well, yeah. I mean, I see it as when you look out the window, you know, trees and nature and everything that's going on, it's a doorway into that reminder that this thing of being natural. That's why I think people fall in love with or flowers, for example. Have a look at a flower and see how natural it is, the natural beauty. And, you know, you can see that in the mountains and the trees and free flowing rivers and streams. And, but the beautiful part and the realization that many people don't make is that it can be found inside yourself with tools, which I'm thinking and seeing, such as autofiction. You're writing, you're being natural. This is what it's that tree is doing. It's what the flower did. It's what everything did. It was being natural. So autofiction allows you to be natural and to let things naturally grow. And they're just words on a page, but you know, it's jumping from real life experiences to mythology to, you know, ancient stories to whatever, but it's a natural occurrence of something in motion. And then when you let it happen, of course, it feels, you know, fun and entertaining. When you read it back, you get another glimpse. It's like looking at that naturally formed beauty in a flower. And that's what, you know, I'm seeing as you're going through and describing the process.
You're an awfully natural minded guy for a wirehead.
Sure. Well, you know, I had to work at it. I mean, I think being immersed in the work I did in Bhutan and, you know, the contemplating, and this goes back to the things I think we were talking about off camera, is having the time to sit and contemplate. And not many people, unfortunately, in this day and age, have that. But there is a growing minority. People are saying, okay, yeah, well, I do have some time because we've reached this aspect of comfort and, yeah, that has built on well, I was going to say unfortunately, but fortunately, and from the generation above mine, like, yeah, my parents, which, you know, I cannot ever begin to describe how much I love and owe them for what they've been able to set up and provide for me, to give me the opportunity to achieve where I've achieved in life, to be able to sit and contemplate and think about the discussion we're having right now around being natural. So, yeah, people kind of see it. I mean, there's a theme around spirituality and yeah, being consciousness and oneness, and you know, these monks and ancient leaders from ancient past have been talking about it for thousands and thousands of years, but it's still been, oh, that's what a monk does. But now I think it's the right time, and because we are reaching a kind of critical tipping point, I myself are looking towards, okay, what would a monk do in this situation? I'm not going to go sit in a cave for, you know, 3 years, but I want to bring some of that practice to my daily life. And it is, I believe, centered around being natural and letting natural events happen. And in some ways, you know, holding the pen or the keyboard or whatever it is to let things naturally flow. And this is where I believe true innovation through, this creative connection that allows things to evolve and really transcend old ways. And, you know, talking about the flower, there had to be a first flower, and somehow, there wasn't humans involved, but yeah, whenever it was 30 million years ago or something like that, the flower just appeared, and it was the natural desire of the plant to create a flower. And you go through, the history of walking out of the water, developing lungs, birds taking flight, up to, I don't know, the invention of the iPhone. What's
evolutionary turning point, right?
Yeah.
Whew,
but now we do have, to
Steve Jobs, right?
Aspect is, blockchain, I think, not to take people too far away, but there are some really innovative and creative and transformative ways of doing things. But in some ways, society isn't ready for it. The world, the environment isn't just prepared. Just like when that first flower appeared, it wouldn't have survived for very long because the environmental conditions were too harsh for flowers to exist. But over time, they're abundant and everywhere across the globe.
I'm getting the impression of, when you speak, of a sequential movement of things, right? Because we conceptualize these things, and more often than not, if we looked at them in their natural setting, they probably would not appear to be linear, right?
Right.
But by simply calling their name, we call them into existence. Sort of like a chant. And I think, hold on one second. This is very, I'm hanging on the edge here. That it's not so much those nonlinear, apparently sequential things, events, whatever, that we are calling to mind when we speak. But I believe that the emphasis is on the catalyst. Now, I remember from college laboratory, right? We all had to do that nonsense, and we always cheated off of each other's notes, right? Because nobody wanted to do that stuff or measure it or whatever. It's just something some geek wanted us to do, and we cheated and did it. Everybody did it. But from time to time, part of that experiment, which is now coming back, right, to reward me for all the time I spent in the lab 3 hours a week, probably would have taken like 3 minutes. We would, from time to time, add a catalyst. And in adding a catalyst, the reaction would either stop or go forward or go into hibernation, whatever, somewhere in between. But it was usually visual, changing color, foaming, heat production, whatever it is. And whether that's, it's an exchange of energy. You've got these crystals, that one in that beaker, that one in that beaker over there, and you put them together, and that they do something together. They, I was going to say interact or react.
Okay.
But I think they interact. And then if you wanted to say, okay, well, you're going to be doctors and all, so we got to show you what happens when you add this to these two, and what happens. So it's like adding a drug to solve something that's out of balance or knock it out of balance even further. And it entropy. It was the free exchange of energy, unless it had been isolated, right? Okay. I mean, you've got, let's say, potassium. Well, I believe if you're going to leave that laying around the laboratory, you're probably going to have it immersed in kerosene or something like that, because if you stuff it up in your faucet and turn on the water, you're going to be looking around for pieces of yourself. So it seems to me that we are actually involved, even though I don't think that we see it directly, involved in a process of decay.
Okay.
Now, we can always choose, California style to see everything perfectly and positively and all these other sort of misnomers about stuff. Or instead of adjusting the environment, we adjust ourselves and how we perceive the environment. Right? And in doing that, we witness the transition of things, which I call decay, right? Because what is it? Chaos is the natural order of things. So everything in order tends to become disordered, which is the way it's gonna be, no matter how hard we try to stop it. So I think primarily the focus for me at the moment, and maybe even in Billy looking into, this Egyptian character, Atum, he's seeing something that does not exist only as a mental formulation. There's no evidence that he can see directly that Atum is or ever was or ever will be, unless the conceptualization of catalysts in his mind leads him in that direction. I suppose you could call a street sign as a catalyst too, right? This is the street you want, right over here, right? And if you don't have the sign, how do you know? Okay, don't give me the phone again, please. We're trying to back off from that, even though we're, bastardizing the poor thing, even as we speak. We should be looking at things, and I think this is a very subtle transition, not at what the positive affect or effect of catalyzation is, but what is the catalyst, not the process. What is the catalyst? Catalyst can be desire. It can be want, need. It can be, I don't know. We could play around this sandbox for a while. But I suppose we might call it, why are you doing what are you doing? What's your catalyst? You could say, well, I got this girl over here from Bhutan and she expects certain things of me. And if I don't get it, she's going to be, really pissed and it's going to make my life miserable. So the whole purpose of the catalyst of your actions would be to bring peace and benefit. For example, maybe it's not.
Sure.
But we reach for these vanishing points. That's what they are. Like in the Last Supper, right? You've got everything that sort of comes together, right? Way out there, or looks like it does. But does it really? And if it's going to get there, are other people going to see what you see? And if it's scientific, then it would have to be observable, measurable, repeatable, and all the others in making something like this occur.
Yeah. Well, I think
so. And one last comment. I'm sorry. I have one last note, if you don't mind.
Sure.
While you were talking, and I was leading up to this whole chaotic catalyst approach, I wrote down a question I would like to ask. I said myself, and it was, why can't yesterday be today? It's not that hard. You just, date things. And if they don't fit within a certain parameter,
right.
So you gradually reduce your life, yourself, to the non-state of being from which you came.
Okay.
So you are indeed, from the moment of formation, in whatever form, and we can argue this as well against the Buddha's prohibition, and say we are in the process of decay. If we look at the larger picture from which we came, once it gives us up, is it not losing part of itself or recombining itself? And is not the universe then in a state of decay? It's not just us, because we look at everything, anthropomorphically. It's me, it's all about me. Well, You may think so, but I have a different opinion.
Okay. Well, my thoughts are going back to the catalyst is that creativity serves as that catalyst. So being
there's a nice
open and enabling environments that support creativity, and creativity can be discussed as well. I mean, it needs a certain space. It's hard to be creative when you've got so much noise, people coming and saying that, hey, you need to get this report done by Tuesday. And so setting up environments that enable creativity. So the environment itself isn't the catalyst, but creativity is the catalyst that supports.
Is it directed creativity?
Well, this is where we come into terminology, and English fails us because we start break it down, cut it open. Okay, let's see how this frog works. In order to see how the frog works, you got to kill it. So, yeah, but you can, on an intellectual, discussion, say, okay, what type of creativity is it? But I think it's just this natural flow of creativity that we all have, and not only human beings have, but every entity living on, planet Earth and beyond. It has this desire. You talk about, the chaos aspect where things want to move, they want to change, they want to explore, they want to see what happens. What happens if I, as a plant, now create a flower? And it must be some, genetic mutation or something that it's forced. But at the same time, there was an insect going, oh my God, what am I going to do today? It's so boring. Oh my God, look at that. What's that? And it flies over to the flower and inadvertently takes some of its pollen, and then, so it's not like you were saying all linear. There's other things that are happening. And then all of a sudden, these insects and plants living in a symbiotic relationship. So, yeah, I don't know where that creativity is coming from, but it exists and you see it. And getting in touch with that seems to be challenging in today's modern times. But yeah, there are hints, I believe, in ancient cultures of teachings such as Buddhism and every religion, not to just mention one, but it enables things to evolve, and autofiction is a method of getting creative. Just let things flow, see what happens, read it over. What does that mean to you? Be in a space where you're open to just being, creative and free. That's what we were saying before. It's about, I don't want money. I just want freedom. It's not the cash flow. It's what I do. And if you're not having some aspect of freedom, then it's kind of, for me anyway.
For a long time since I've been talking to you, and now you've spurred me on to bring something up because it came from what you were talking about. And the whole idea, it's two words, actually. I don't know how to bridge into it, but I'll just jump in before I lose it. As between the association between, I'll just say it, maybe back out of it. Because we were talking about creativity.
Yeah.
Well, it seems as though, it's like somebody in ancient Rome, they had blocks in the middle of the street so the chariots wouldn't race through the streets, right? Like a speed bump.
Yeah.
Right. And this is kind of like that. That before anything really happens in the mind, I keep trying to find a way in, but let me just say the three words, and maybe you can throw me a life raft. Here we go.
Yeah.
Thought is directed.
Okay.
That, to me, is what distinguishes thought, maybe the progenitor of creativity. Outside of the natural. I mean, there's natural creativity, what happens in our cells in our body and the plants growing, seasons, cycles and everything, all of that, physics and chemistry. But if we're going to disrupt things, if we're going to introduce or reintroduce a chaotic approach to understanding life or what it is we're doing or what motivates people, etc., my focus is on, first of all, on thought. What is it? We can discuss it later. But the characteristic that distinguishes thought as such, I believe, is its direction.
Right.
And if you did not direct your thinking or your thought towards something, no, that's not correct either. I was going to say, you wouldn't have a thought. But if you, what is the progenitor of thought?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Besides, some lame excuse of calling it like creativity.
Right.
Yeah, no kidding. Right. But thought, for me, the distinguishing characteristic of thought is it has direction. Mm-hmm. And where we can take that, maybe we can talk about next time, since we're, I'm sure, laboring our audience, the millions of people. How many did you say? 3 million people? 100 million people? Listening to what we're saying right now, which is going to change their whole life and, make them happier people. We save the planet and, get to go for a ride on a spaceship out to Nibiru or somewhere.
Yeah, great session, Danny.
Well, there you have it. Any more questions? Anybody? We've given them a place to start, Troy,
Exactly. We're putting it out there. We're looking for people to comment, to come and ask us, what the hell we're talking about, or what do you
Please tell us
from it. Yeah, we want to know. But if you like this and you want more, please leave a comment, and we'll take the direction of our thought to more and more ways of what people want, and we're just having fun with it. So let's see how it goes. Thank you, Danny. Till next time. Bye.